What up, what up? People's Choice Mobile LLC. All right, wanted to touch bases with you guys. I know it's been a minute since I've done anything, but I wanted to kind of go over with you about headlight restoration. I know I might have posted a video or two on headlights, but I kind of wanted today to go over these steps with you. Excuse the noise. Got guys out here with the landscaping. So shouts out to A&A, by the way. But check it out. So I wanted to go over it with you guys what I do first. So this headlight is already cloudy because I've already been wet sanding on it. Now what I started out with, and I didn't have any 600 grit sandpaper. What I would like to have started out with is 600 grit, but the lowest I had is 800 grit. Well, actually the lowest I have is 400 grit. But I don't want to go that low because 400 grit is a little bit too rough. So I have 800 grit sandpaper, and I've been wet sanding the headlights. And like I told you before, I'm going in a back and forth motion. I'm not doing all of the circular stuff. The reason I'm not doing all of the circular motion and the crisscross, and because when you go to buff it out, it makes it harder to remove the scratches. So you want to have the most clarity in the plastic that you can have, and the easiest way to achieve that is a straight back and forth motion. So we're going to continue to work on this headlight, then I'm going to come over to this one on this side. This one is not as rough as this one was over here, but it's still bad. You can kind of see around the top edges. So we're going to continue to work on this one, and then I'll be back with you on step 2. All right, check it out. Step 2, after I've wet sanded, step 2 would be to buff the headlights with the compound. Now I know a lot of you guys say, well, if you started with 800 grit, how come you didn't go to 1,000 grit and 2,000 grit and then, you know, etc., etc., etc. Well, it's because of the compound that I'm working with. I started out with 800 grit. The compound is 1,000 grit. It's equivalent to 1,000 grit sandpaper, and this is a wool pad, which is like a buffing compounding pad. This one right here, and if you notice, the wheel is actually smaller. It's like a 3-inch, I think, diameter wheel. Yeah, 3-inch diameter wheel. So as far as me not taping the edges around here, around the headlight, you know, a lot of guys would put tape around the edges to kind of prevent the buffer from burning the paint or marring the paint, which I don't have to really worry about that because of the smaller wheel. And on top of that, the edges of the wheel are going to do nothing but hit the paint anyway, with the wool part. So I'm not really concerned about it. You know, I guess experience taught me how to be a little bit more careful when it comes to bumper paint and working around the edges and having this smaller diameter wheel. Now, if I had a big diameter wheel and didn't have a small diameter wheel, yes, I would have taped it up. But because I don't have a big wheel, I just have the small wheel, it allows me to work a little bit more effectively around the edges. And that's so using the 800 grit in addition with the 1,000 grit equivalent compound, it allows me to do what I need to do and bring the clarity back to the headlight. So after I've done with this one, I'll show you how it came out, and then we'll go on to polishing and then putting a ceramic coat on top of it. All right, coming back at you. I'm on step number 3. As it turns out, this BMW, the headlights, they require that I do an extra step. So initially I wet sanded it, and then I came back and buffed it. Wasn't satisfied with how it turned out with the buff, so I wet sanded again, and then I just continued to buff using the 1,000 grit compound. And then after I sanded one more time, I came back and buffed it again with the 1,000 grit. And now I'm on to the finishing, the 1500. This product here, you see that it's Ardix 1500, 1500 plus polishing material, finishing material. So now it's bringing back a little clarity to the headlight. So I'm just working out the little minor scratches that were put in there by the sandpaper. And then once I finish this step with this pad, if you notice, it's a yellow pad. It's a wool pad, but it's yellow, which means it's less aggressive than that pad was. That pad is a little bit more aggressive. That's the kind of pad that you would use after a body shop would use a 6-inch pad or a 7-inch pad. They would use after they just painted a car to buff it out and to even out the paint surface. Then they would come back and use this pad, which is a little bit more aggressive. Body shops use this particular pad. They tend to leave swirl marks all in the car with the compound, and then they try to use the same pad to polish it, and it just leaves swirl marks all in the car. So with those pads, you have to use an aggressive pad to knock down the paint and to flatten it out and even it up with the compound. And then you come back with a less aggressive pad, and then you come back with an even less aggressive pad when you want to polish it out for your final finish. And so the same thing applies with the headlights. After you compound it, you want to flatten out the plastic and buff it back to a luster. And then you want to kind of remove those little fine scratches that you may have put in there with the sandpaper. Just work it. And then I'll come back with the foam pad with the polish and then just polish it out to the highest of clarity that I can get it. And that same thing applies with the body panels. Some of you guys can use foam pads, but they do make wool pads that are less aggressive and that won't leave swirl marks and holograms in the paint. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and continue working out the scratches, the little fine scratches there. You may or may not be able to see them. It's very bright out here, so I don't know if you can see them. But I'll continue to work this, and then once I'm satisfied with that, then I'll come back and I'll polish it as my final step as far as correcting the headlight. And then I'll come back and I'll put like the coating on it, the ceramic coating. That'll protect it from the UV rays and stuff. Alright, be back. Alright, so check it out. I'm kind of satisfied with the headlight. So now my final step is going to be polishing it out. High speed polish. And you can tell I have a different pad. It's a foam pad, my polishing pad. And I'm going to be using a polish to go ahead and bring out the clarity even more. So I recondition this light, this headlight. It's pretty doggone good to me. So, and after I finish this one, then I'll move to that one over there on that side. Then I'll wash the car. Once I wash it, I'll remove all of the gunked up waxes and everything inside of the corners and the edges on top here. And then I'll come back and make my final preparation for the ceramic coating. Alright, check out it. Alright, moving on to the second headlight. This one here, you can kind of, we'll step back a little bit. You can kind of see it. See where it's got some oxidation and micro scratches up top here. On the bottom, it's a little bit oxidized there. But these little scratches, I don't know if a lot of you guys know, these little bitty scratches right here where it gets rough, this is where the UV rays for the sun start etching into it, and then you get what is called stress marks or stress fractures in the plastic. Is where it's just cracking, and it's just because of stress, you know what I'm saying, with the heat the sun, the UV rays, and then it gets cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. That causes stress on the plastic here. As a matter of fact, you can get that on anything, usually any material, especially with a lot of different metals and stuff like that. You get what you call stress fractures, and they can be micro. You won't even recognize them, but the integral structure of the metals or the plastic gets very weak. So when you expose it to the sun as such, you start to get this happening. So that's on this headlight. I'm getting ready to work with this one. And then this one is the one that I just polished. So like I said, I'm gonna come back and wash it and get all of the gunk and stuff, and then prep it for ceramic coating. And then I'm gonna make this one look just like that one. So stay tuned, guys. Alright, so here we are with the finished product. Alright, so I had to put a little bit more elbow grease in it than I expected it, but it came out lovely. Of course, I polished it. You guys saw that final step when I polished it. And then the last final step was putting on the ceramic coating, which I put that on. And I let it come to a haze, or per the instructions of what it says you're supposed to, how long you're supposed to let it sit, and then you wipe it off. So big difference. BMW lights. Step 1, wet sand. On this, I would have liked to start with 600 grit, and then 800 grit, and then 1,000 grit compound, or the compound that's equivalent to 1,000 grit. So step 1 was the 600, would have been 600 grit, but I didn't have 600 grit. So I had to start with 800 grit and then just work a little extra harder to wet sand it. But step 1 would have been 600 grit. Step 2 would have been 800 grit. Step 3 would have been compounding with the compound, heavy duty compound that's equivalent to 1,000 grit. Step 4 would have been to come back with the finishing product there, which was equivalent to 1,500 grit, reducing the scratches and taking out scratches that 1,500 grit sandpaper would have taken care of. Step 5 would have been to high-speed polish with a good polish, and then 6 was the ceramic coating. So in this particular vehicle, I would have taken 6 steps, but because I didn't have 600 grit sandpaper, took 5 steps and worked a little extra harder on the first step. Alright guys, People's Choice Mobile LLC signing out. Deuces.